Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. As Pakistan grapples with renewed increase in terrorism, we've seen the visit of Tom West as he acknowledges the grave threat posed by TTP to Pakistan. We'll be talking about the US support at this time. When his visit, during his visit, he categorically said that US will support Pakistan in countering terrorism and this wave of terrorism, increased terrorism that we've seen over the recent spate of these terrorist attacks. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this visit. We'll also, of course, be talking about overall the threat of TTP posed to Pakistan, the measures that are being taken by the government to curb this terrorism. We're also, of course, looking at the COA's visit to the US in the wake of the increase in terrorism. Also, we'll be talking about the ramifications of all of this. A little later on, we'll also be talking about the misuse of social media. Of course, there's a code of conduct that the ECP has given out, but is that being followed? And overall, what kind of misuse of the code of conduct have we recently seen as far as social media is concerned, as far as political parties are concerned, and as the campaign picks up also. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Haq Shamsi, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for joining us today. We have with us Brigadier Waqar Hassan Khan, who's a defense analyst. Thank you for being with us today. A little later on, we'll also be joined by other guests. Ji, Dr. Zia, like I said, you know, this visit of Tom West and his support of US to curb the kind of terrorism that we've seen, the spate of terrorism also recent, also the increase in terrorism overall that's coming from organizations like the TTP. What is your overall opinion about, you know, the steps that we have taken to curb this terrorism, and what do you foresee are, you know, likely in the next perhaps couple of weeks or so?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Mahrukh. Very important, and I think the timings of your program is also very important, that we must discuss this subject threadbare, because the threat is real and perhaps it is going to stay for some time, some more time. I mean, it has been on for a long time now, but perhaps it will stay for some more time, till such time Afghanistan gets settled, Taliban government is recognized, and they start to function as normal state, as states do. Only then perhaps they will be able to control these elements which take easy refuge in Afghanistan and plan their attacks inside Pakistan, especially on critical infrastructure and sensitive installations. So in my view, it's a long drawn war.
Okay.
It has already been long. I mean, there is no doubt about it. We did control it in the mid of 20s, but I think we need to go further after them, because these attacks are not stopping any time. Actually, they are hurting us now, and with the election season coming, I see there could be resurgence in these activities, and God forbid, they might carry out attacks on peoples during the public rallies and try and target some political leadership alongside critical installations. Therefore, Tom West visit was very significant, and the most important thing on our part was to convince them that we have a threat.
Which they've acknowledged.
Which this time they have acknowledged, because earlier they were calling for do more, do this, then we understand. But
so
this
you
time,
think it's a significant development?
Definitely. It's a very significant development, and it will go perhaps some down the line, because US also visiting the US. So it is going to be back-to-back consultations. And I see some tangible support from the US in this connection, because we need it badly and we need it now.
Let me go to Waqar Sahab on this. Brigadier Sahab, is it in your opinion, I mean, when we say that this acknowledgement of support that is coming at a time like this from the US, you think it's going to be followed by tangible support, in terms of, what the US can assist us, how they can assist us? How do you, is it going to translate into that kind of a tangible support?
Yeah, I think one is the US realized that the kind of arsenal they had left, about $7 billion worth was reported. So they have some responsibility. Despite that, publicly it was denied, but definitely this was available with the Taliban and the terror groups. The other is that regional countries have been doing it. Like in Moscow format, I think Central Asia, Russia, Iran, Pakistan has been telling Taliban leadership very squarely. Mr. Muttaqi was there on 30th September that they should shut down these terrorist outlets and factories. And now I think you must have followed the report last week where international terrorism hubs have been discovered, and there are now probably again the global threat could emerge from Afghanistan in terms of terrorism. So I think that brings the US into play, because in case Al Qaeda gets reactivated, so all that effort of I think 2 decades, then basically it suffers a big jolt. So one is that. The other is I think the bilateral tone of this visit by Chief of Army Staff, because he's already visited like China, he's visited Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran, I think Turkey, and even Azerbaijan and UK. So it's basically one-to-one bilateral relationship, and I think US has also realized for last 2 years, it appeared that probably there was some coldness within the relationship, and I think one of the political parties was highlighting, especially when they were ousted, although they were responsible for, I think, denting the relationship between the sole superpower and Pakistan. And we've been allied, I think, in past 70 years in some form or the other. So it's a very important relationship. Our diaspora is about 500,000. And then, of course, your biggest trade partner in terms of exports from Pakistan is US. I think they take 50% quota of your cotton yarn and garments and all that. So all told, then Pakistan also has economic challenges, security challenges. So this, I think, visit is very significant. One, of course, the background is Afghanistan, as we discussed. The other is, of course, US-Pakistan relation. US also looks at, Eastern Europe wars, and now, Hamas-Israel conflict. And so increasingly it's becoming actually isolated within Islamic world. So they would like to engage with important countries, and that could also be one reason. But I think military diplomacy has done a lot for Pakistan earlier. Even Chief of Army Staff this year, if you look at the visits, the focus was on security, bilateral, and then economy. And I'm sure something good can come out of it. So in case Pakistan is economically strong, it can definitely fight terrorism. And Afghanistan, I think, is one country that we'll have to deal on daily basis. So it means that we still see that till the time it stabilizes, which I don't foresee in near future. So we'll have to deal. So we have to be very, very patient.
Hassan. Let me go to Hassan Khan, and I will come back to you. Hassan, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hassan, one of the things that Brigadier Saab just mentioned is he said, we have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis as far as Afghanistan is concerned. How would you, look at that statement, considering the fact that, of course, the kind of terrorism that is, stemming from there is something that, we need to now curtail, even as we speak. And for us to be able to counter it is essential. And that, with the recent attacks, is becoming somewhat of a challenge. Would you agree?
I think definitely Afghanistan and the situation in Afghanistan and the challenges which Pakistan is facing at the moment on the Afghan front with the Afghan border. I think these are serious challenges, and definitely Pakistan, and especially the current establishment, whether it is security establishment or the political establishment, they are trying their level best. And I think sometimes, maybe most of the time, they are resorting to out-of-the-box solution, not trying the already tried ways to deal with the situation, especially the terrorism which is emanating from Afghanistan. So I think this is a big challenge. And Pakistan so far, I think the strong arm tactics and the clear policy lines which the current administration is pursuing, I think somehow the effects the tremors are being felt in Kabul. So I'm pretty sure that the continued policy with persistence and with the
Then
focus.
when we say that we have to take a harder line, it's going to be a change in the policy, or is it going to be a continuation of the same, in your opinion?
I think a lot of soft policies on Afghan front, especially the political divide, I will say, the divided narratives vis-a-vis Afghanistan, how to deal with Afghanistan. I think Pakistan has paid a lot of price for that. And quite unfortunately, in return, Pakistan got nothing. So if you ask me my personal opinion, so definitely I will say that it's the time that Pakistan must come up with a clear policy with a hardline approach. I think the soft line approach is no more working as far as Afghanistan is concerned. So definitely we shall be ready to pay a bit of a price for that too. But consistency and continuity in policy, I'm pretty sure that the next administration, when they take over after the February 9 election, so definitely they will also pursue this policy. Only then we can get the result, or only then we can have a sustained approach as far as this terrorism, especially the cross-border terrorism, is concerned. Otherwise, I think this hit and run, coming up with a new policy after every few months, I think that has never paid in the past, and neither they will pay in the future.
Right, let me come back to you. Dr. Zia, do you agree with what Hassan is saying? He's saying that, perhaps, do you think a rethink perhaps is in process or is in order as far as, our policy vis-a-vis Afghanistan is concerned?
Unfortunately, I would not agree with these terminologies like hard power or soft power or rethinking or these things. Interstate relations are not done on short-term basis or 24/7 basis. If you want to have good, productive engagement with Afghanistan, you have to deal with Taliban. They are in power. They are a force to reckon with. They fought with the United States, the world's best military of warfare history, and they had to leave in a haste after 20 years and handed over the power to the same people who were ousted 20 years ago. So we must recognize the Taliban as a reality. We have been working with Taliban. We have been, sole supporter of Taliban at one time in history. And we need to make them understand that now that they are back, we need to have productive engagement. We should deal Afghanistan as any other state, and not a special state, and develop medium to long term relationship with them. The China has already recognized them. Chinese embassy is already there. We are strategic partners of China. We can use their leverage. We can use our own leverage with Taliban. We have had a long standing relationship with Taliban itself.
We talk about China, yes, we are a long time ally of China, but our socio-political, even regional, ties with Afghanistan are perhaps more complicated, no?
No, they're always complicated. Interstate relations with the neighbor is always complicated. That does not mean that the diplomacy cannot handle it. Okay. My view is that let our interim foreign minister, Jalil Abbas Jilani, handle it. Okay, and you will see the result in the coming months. But I do not agree that we should deal with them 24/7 basis, or we should deal with them as a hard power or something. It will not work with
But we have to come down, clamp down on this terrorism.
That is not against Afghan government, but the TTP.
Against the TTP.
There is a difference
of course.
There is a difference between dealing interstate relations and dealing with the rogue elements.
But are they? But the question is, are they effectively dealing with those rogue elements?
They will do that if we directly deal with the government.
Right, fair enough. Let me come back to you on that, and I'm going to go to this to Brigadier Sahib with the same question. Brigadier Sahib, are we clamping down on for us to clamp down on this wave of terrorism? Is it going to, like Dr. Zia here said, is it about the fact that we need a rethink? Is it about the fact that how effective the control of the Taliban government is on these rogue elements? And for us to take stock of that, and with regard to that, perhaps a change is in order?
Yeah, I think I'll have to spend some time. So give me some time to, I think, respond. Definitely, opinion is always respected. Now, if you look at Taliban diplomatically, I think we are one of the only countries. I think 3 or 4 countries have diplomatic relations, full-fledged diplomatic relations. Pakistan is probably the leading one. So there's no problem with that. In India, they had to shut down the embassy, which has now become their kind of sponsor or uncle against Pakistan. The hostile agencies are trying. So one is that diplomatically, I think we were the first one to hold the investment conference for Afghanistan, isn't it true? And then, of course, we were the one who were pursuing the entire world that they should. So we recognize, as far as Taliban is concerned, their being in power, it is all recognized, they are respected. And we also respect their Amir al-Mu'mineen, or let's say, Supreme Leader Mullah Hibatullah. Now,
And we were one of those nations that celebrated when they came into power. After what happened with the US. But the question is, what of now?
Yeah, I come to the issue of now why it is basically seen one-sided. Pakistan, did Pakistan, adopt to any such, let's say, tactics that now we are trying to use? The only request was to Mullah Hibatullah, who's the supreme leader. And I tell you, TTP has oath of allegiance on his hand. It's a bath, in Urdu. So it means that in case he clearly tells them to stop it, I think it can be stopped. It's not matter of writ of the state, because Taliban have that leverage on TTP. So I'll not agree with that we should be, just getting beaten. If we are the elder brother, every time the younger brother comes and slaps you. And what have we done, let's say? In the last 2 years, what has Pakistan done that it deserved that treatment? And there's non-stop terrorism. Our, kids and women, children, military, police, they are, embracing shahadat just because this is a negative theory they want to use. So I think they have also to realize. So I think it was all the diplomatically it was conveyed. I think the evidence was shared at intelligence level, at military and government level, and then it became, too much. The red line was drawn, because I don't think so any country would take, I would say, this nonsense that one side we have terrorism and the other side is playing, totally, let's say, soft. The other is repatriation of, illegal Afghans. We are still holding 50 lakh Afghans, immigrants or muhajirin here, respected people, and we've hosted them for last almost 4 decades, and only the illegal are going back. So 32 lakh are still going to be our guests, and they are very much almost integrated in the society. So all Afghan transit trade, every month 3 lakh Afghans come to Pakistan. They cross over because of health reasons, education, business, transport. There's a lot of connectivity, and grain Pakistan provides. I tell you, if we don't, and there are brothers, it will cause starvation in Afghanistan. So it's all positive leverage Pakistan has never used. But in case terrorism is continuously doing it with proofs, then I think one has to look at your own house. So probably that's why the decision was taken. I think in that preview, there's talk of day-to-day dealing. And why I would say is in last 40 years, there were 2 superpower interventions. So practically there was no Afghan government. 20 years the US ruled, and for almost 1 decade was the Soviet Union. It was only 10 years. And there were 5 regime changes in Afghanistan in last 40 years, 5 regime change. And it means that you have to actually deal with this country on daily. That's my point, that it's a situation in flux. Generally it's unstable, so we'll have to deal it. But otherwise, all respect to the opinion, but I think we had enough of it.
Let me come back to you. Ji Hassan, if you heard what Brigadier Sahib is saying, what is your opinion on this? Are we going to be able to, as far as the Taliban government is concerned, is it going to be able to curb this spate of terrorism? Do you agree with what Brigadier Sahib is saying? What is your take on this?
I think personally, I'm of the opinion that look, any message, any signal which we are sending to Kabul, that shall be clear, loud and clear. I'm not saying that this is the time that Pakistan shall take arm against the Taliban or the Amarat Islami, the Afghan Taliban, etc. I'm not of that opinion. I just want to tell one thing, that look, when they came into power, there were certain expectations. Maybe these were wrong expectations. We were expecting that these are the same people for whom Pakistan has taken against the entire world. Everybody was telling us that we are keeping snacks in our backyard. But despite that, the whole world was against us. The former Afghan governments, whether that was Dr. Ghani or that President Karzai, they were repeatedly telling us that don't support these elements. But overtly or covertly, we did that. Maybe that was a policy. I'm not going into that detail, whether that policy was good or bad. Definitely, we need to take stock of it. But at the moment, what I want to say is that when Taliban came into power in Afghanistan, at least we were having these honest expectations that they will rein in on these terrorist elements. Especially, look, they have pacified the ETIM, which is fighting against the Chinese. They have somehow taken on the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, yes. And they are, to an extent, they have reined in on Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is no more that active to engage with any other country. Nowhere. You look at for the last 4 years, there is not a single attack on the UN interest. Even from the day when Taliban get engaged in talks with the US administration, but their entire, unfortunately, is against Pakistan. Look, Pakistan is the only country where we are almost daily on average basis. 3 or 4 terrorist attacks are.
So it's not fair that we have to be, we're on the front line, even as a target of this kind of terrorism, and yet we continue to assist and, to be of support to the Taliban government. I mean, the curbing of terrorism is of course, how effective are they? It's going to come to be their responsibility, is it not? Capacity issues, overall, whether they can do it or not, and whether, they have the capacity to curb these rogue elements, those are the questions for us.
I think that's what we are trying to give them a space, that these semantics, that they can do it, or they have the will to do it. The question of the will to do it or the capacity to it, that at least they shall have that concern for Pakistan, the terrorist activities which are being carried out in Pakistan. At least they should show a concern, but the way the statement coming from Kabul, look at the Peshawar terrorist attack when the mosque was attacked, and 120 worshippers were, I think, were butchered or martyred. You remember the statement of the Taliban foreign minister, Mullah Mutawakkil. So I think later on the statement of the spokesperson, at least if they can't, I'm not expecting them to take up arm against the TTP, at least they should show some sympathy, but denying it completely, that it is Pakistan's internal problem. We are not responsible for carrying security issues we are not responsible for the security of Pakistan's thing, etc. TTP's people are fight that they are the Pakistanis and they are the unhappy elements, or they are not things like that.
What about Hassan? What about violations of our border, for example? We have taken stock of the situation. We are manning it also very diligently, but the violations are coming from the other side. Isn't that true?
I think look, this is not a small border, and I think Pakistan doesn't have that capacity to man it completely, because even the most developed countries like the US, it is unable to man its entire border, or to fence its entire border with Mexico and other countries. So I think we need to be realistic. If there is no cooperation, and at least if there is no realization to work with the government of Pakistan, so my point is that we need to be a bit hard on it. We have to take a look after our interests. We have to keep it in mind that those who are killing our security boys, those who are killing our innocent people, they shall be taken to task at any cost. And I think
before I go to Dr. Saab here, are you trying to suggest kinetic operations like before, for example? Ji, Hassan. Sorry, there's a problem with audio. Ji, Dr. Zia, you heard what Hassan is saying. Do you think it's about kinetic operations? We, of course, have in the past, but will it boil down to that, in your opinion?
In fact, I have a problem with the terminologies that we are using. Why do we say Taliban government?
Okay.
It is Afghan government.
Okay.
Afghan government, Taliban administration. Okay?
Fair enough.
Number one. Number two, we are to go after the non-state actors and the terrorists, not the government.
No, of course not. I'm saying that with
I'm
our policy with regard to...
I'm coming to that. Policy is very prudent. Alhamdulillah, our security forces know their job. They have been doing it before also. Our foreign office knows how to handle it. Let them do it, and inshallah ta'ala it will be done. But my point is that we should plug the gaps which are there inside. We must recognize the enemy within, because these attacks cannot happen without an insider support. They do not start walking from Kabul with the bombs on their body and enter the
But we
border.
have continued and are continuing intelligence-based operations.
That is what is required. That is what is required.
Okay.
But deal with the Afghan government,
Okay.
government level, as a responsible
So you
government.
think it's a capacity issue for the Afghan government?
Of course. How do you expect a state which is at war for last 45 years to start working as a civilized environment within 2 years of independence? No, it's not possible. And it will not happen. If you want to continue like this, we can continue.
Fair enough. Brigadier Sahab, I have very little time, but your quick comments overall on whether you agree with what Dr. Zia here is saying, or, as Hassan was saying, perhaps a rethink?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, I'm not condemning. I've been, I think, supporting the Taliban, when the Americans were there, even in our articles, that basically they were fighting for freedom. But point is that in case there is a capacity issue, will they allow Pakistan to then cross border and deal with these rogue elements, TTP? Isn't TTP carrying out terrorist attacks? The other is, can we do coordination? Let's say intelligence coordination and joint operations. Are they going to allow it? No, they're not going to allow. I still feel that part of this setup would continue to use terrorism as a leverage, because the evidence has been shared, and in case there's political will on their part, I think the moment they tell TTP, it will make a lot of difference. So there's a fatwa by Mullah Habatullah that terrorism is facade, and probably they will not offer their funerals whosoever attacks any country, not even Pakistan. So, and somebody pointed out that in Central Asia or Iran, there's very less activity by these rogues. Mainly, I think 70% effort is coming against. Why? So what's the objective? So, and then of course the evidence has been shared. I'm sure with the good diplomacy, intelligence-based operation, and some pressure on the Afghan interim government, I think things are going to get better. But they should realize there are so many issues within Afghanistan. People are getting connected. The region is getting connected. Now, if India is shut down,
said, how do you expect a nation that has been at war for the last 45 years to be able, to get back to effective control of all its affairs within 2 years? That is also a fact one has to contend and agree with. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Ziaul Haq Shamsi. Thank you for joining us. Brigadier Waqar, thank you for being with us. We're going to be taking a short break, after which we will come back and talk about the use of social media, the code of conduct that the Election Commission of Pakistan has given out, and what kind of misuse, if and when, we have seen recently. All of that today. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We have with us Barrister Safiullah Ghauri, who's a political analyst, also a legal expert. Thank you for being with us. Safiullah, for a while we've seen, the way that social media has been used, and of course, it's interesting to note that there is clearly a code of conduct in place by the ECP for social and digital media. As a lawyer, How effective is it? I think, that question has to be asked. We've also recently seen a lot of, what is allowed and what is not allowed. And, the line, is it being crossed every day, even as we speak? And how stringent are these measures, to say, in the first place? In the sense that, are they being followed? Are they expected to be followed?
Right. Thank you so much, Mahrukh. First of all, just right off the cuff, I have an observation to make here, which is that Pakistan, and this is my opinion, but I think an opinion that is being echoed now by a lot of people. Pakistan has some of the freest media that I have seen anywhere in the world. I say this with complete responsibility, and the reason why I say this is because we see now in the ongoing onslaught, genocide taking place in Gaza, that not a lot of media channels can report things that are happening as they stand. They just do not have the ability to. And even social media is shadow banning things, they're censoring, and we see that this censorship is taking place not just on digital media, it's taking place on mainstream media, it's taking place in the press. And so then when I look at Pakistan, I sort of start to think that Pakistan has never had these kind of draconian censorship measures that we see elsewhere in the world. Now, with that said, I will get back to the question that you asked, which is,
But is it draconian? Whether draconian or not, the question is: are we in need of stringent measures? And if we do already have them, are we in need of perhaps implementation of those measures in a more stringent manner?
I completely agree. And the reason why I agree with you, Mahrukh, is because every single day, and I see all across social media, I see all across traditional digital media, press and TV, people talking about things that pertain to the law, about the Supreme Court, about the Election Commission, about the political parties, without having the first clue about what they are, and more often than not going against the law of the country. So for instance, the Supreme Court has a very clear law. Let's say one of the laws is contempt of court. Contempt of court, the law clearly states that contempt is not just bringing ridicule to the court, which is also something that we have very often. But apart from ridicule to the court, trying to predict judgments, trying to predict what's going to happen in a particular case is also something that is contemptuous of a court. A court is fully in its right to do something, and if a matter is sub judice, it cannot be discussed on media. But that is exactly what is being discussed on media day in and day out. And so, for instance, right now, you mentioned about what's happening in the Election Commission, and there are proceedings going on. The Election Commission is hearing them. There are judicial proceedings. The judges can get swayed by watching television, and that is why it is said that when a case is taking place, do not comment on it. But what we see is, we see analysts come forward day in and day out, talk about the different types of cases.
Safiullah, have political parties. We have all political parties, I think, consistently commenting on outcomes of cases, on judges, their conduct. So it seems all is allowed and has been allowed for a while now. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think that, and this is to Pakistan's detriment. The reason why this is to Pakistan's detriment is because what this has led to is a spirit of disillusionment amongst the entire Pakistani youth. Now everybody can just stand up and start saying, oh, they're going to decide incorrectly because they're corrupt. Every single time it's the same thing. I am completely tired of this narrative. I don't think this works anymore. And I won't talk about the kind of measures that can be taken and if what those measures are. Unfortunately, there are not many measures that can be taken. There is of course PECA, and
I think it's perhaps the easiest thing in Pakistan to call somebody corrupt.
Absolutely,
and there's no need for any substantiation. There's no need for any proof. There is, of course, one has to acknowledge that it is the politicians that invariably fall prey to such allegations more often than others, perhaps.
But it's the politicians who sell snake oil by constantly trying to sell a narrative, turning everything in and around their own narrative. The result of this is that we have now become very polarized. As a country, all of us have become hateful, vengeful. We don't like each other, and we continue to disparage ourselves to our own detriment. We are all losers here, Mahrukh. Now,
as far as legal discourse is concerned, if we talk about libel or slander, the effectiveness of those laws in Pakistan Are we going to come to that, or there are other ways to go around that?
This is what I want to. So there are a couple of laws, right, that prevent you from doing this. There's of course the ongoing threat of libel and slander. I've been a lawyer for Mir Shakil Rahman, and I won the record defamation case in Pakistan. That's the highest amount that has ever been granted to anyone. I thought this was about 4 years ago. I thought after that people would continue to get bigger and bigger damages. But unfortunately, what I've seen only recently, for instance, in Asma Shirazi's case, when she went to the Islamabad High Court and won damages of only 50,000. And that's just tragic. The fact that the courts are not sort of giving extraordinary relief to people who are filing defamation and slander cases. But even if the courts were to give relief, the problem, Mahrukh, is this is not a remedy. The cases like these, when I was representing Mir Shakil Saab, it took me 3 years to get the judgment. Asma Shirazi also hung around for 4 or 5 years. Everyone has to go through a very long process before they get any relief, and by that time it's old news. So if I say something that is defamatory of you, Mahrukh, you will eventually get relief from me, but that will be after 3 years, and in the 3 years people will continue to believe what I have said, and that continues to tarnish reputations. So I don't think the courts are in the right in the right setup to try and figure this out. There's only 2 ways of doing it. One way of doing it is through the PTA to just ban a particular website, but we can't do that because most of the slander is now taking place on social media. So we can't go around banning Instagram and Facebook whenever we want, right? So there is a solution.
No, but the PTA has done so on a record number of cases. I mean, we saw what happened with, Tohine. We saw, with the things that were said we saw as far as the things said for the Prophet, for example, religiously, which were, to hurt the religious sentiments of Muslims, all of that. And we saw the PTA come down on and act against those. So there are times that, that happens. But again, the effectiveness, like you said, is diluted because it's not always on one platform. And then, it's about where the jurisdiction lies.
PTA just bans Facebook, right? So if it bans Facebook because some defamation is taking place, some incorrect misinformation is being taken place.
It bans sites also.
Yeah, exactly. The problem here is that there are millions of Pakistanis now whose livelihoods are connected
to sites. Safiullah, I will let you answer this. I have to go to Dr. Shoaib, but I will come back to you. Ji, Dr. Shoaib, can you hear me?
Yes, listening.
Dr. Shoaib, we're talking about the ability to come down on the misuse of social media. And of course, we've seen recently, there has been, for a while, the misuse of social media, and that is continuing. And we're also talking about the laws and their ability to deal with them in an effective manner. As far as, how would you rate it in your opinion? And like Barrister Safiullah is saying, sometimes it's too little, too late.
Thank you, Mahrukh. It's a very important topic, and if we talk about the use of social media, I usually say it's a double-edged sword. On its one end, you can cut down so many hurdles which are coming into the uplift of your society, and there are so many other factors which can be very well managed with the help of this social media on one hand. No? And on second hand, yes, of course, there are so many misuses and all other factors are associated with this. But to me, it's very important while if you are going for any invention or if you are moving towards any betterment, there must be some sort of advocacy and awareness at all levels. We are passing through a very, very turbulent time, as you were discussing, and I was just listening it. We are passing through a very turbulent time. In this time, as a society, not as an individual, and nor we can ask parents they should have their own control. And there are a number of devices which keep on coming, which shows the parental control and things like that. This is not only the job of parents. This is the job of whole society is to come forward and do some and to take certain measures through which we can be able to control. It's just like dynamite. Dynamite was basically invented for doing some spade work, but later on it was used for the killing of human beings. So this social media, to me, it's just like a dynamite. if we are not working on it as a whole, or the whole society is not contributing towards its better use, we may not be able to get rid of this.
Isn't there a long-term goal when we want our society not to participate in a certain activity, or we want us to be able, that in the meantime there have to be stringent measures in place to safeguard people's reputations, to safeguard people's dignity and their respect? Isn't that true?
This has to be controlled, yes, of course, and at all level, not at the state level, at all level. And I usually feel very sorry for those people, those who are having the typical mindset to which they are just humiliating others, or they are using this wonderful technology for humiliating others, or misusing it and just to defame certain things. This is not by all means is the exact use of this, you may say, this technology.
Unfortunately, I'm running out of time. I'm going to go to Barrister Safiullah Ghauri. Safiullah, unfortunately, we have very little time for this segment. I would like to perhaps, discuss it at length on another occasion. But a quick last question to you. Do you think that, as we get closer to the elections, we're going to be perhaps looking at more of this misuse all round?
I can tell you two things. There are two measures that I feel like will be taken. There is of course going to be an increase. There's no doubt about that. More conspiracy theories, more misinformation. We'll see, and we have seen in the past, even not just in Pakistan, even in the US, we have seen that technology firms like Cambridge Analytica have swayed entire elections in the US, for instance. Entire elections in a country like the United States were managed by technology firms. So it's very easy for somebody to buy technologies from Israel, from the US, from the UK, and implement them here in Pakistan. There are reports that they have been done so in the past as well. That said, I think the solution that I wanted to propose is a national firewall. A national firewall exists in China. A national firewall exists in all of the UAE, in Saudi Arabia. And I think that's what we also need, so that we do not have to shut down entire websites every time. We do not have to shut down electricity every time. We can continue to filter content
in a... How does a national firewall work?
A national firewall is basically going to be a technology that filters information that comes and goes, and the filters of the technology will be with the state. So PEMRA would be empowered to decide what kind of PEMRA, PTA, whatever authority is set up to control that firewall, will be responsible for ensuring that something. So I'll give you an example. There are, if you, for instance, post on Palestine now, there are, if you were to post on Palestine, if you were based in the US, your IP address would be caught and the US would automatically filter it out. They have firewalled it. So that's exactly how China also works. You cannot talk up against the Chinese government on the internet. You can search on the internet, you can use Google, but you will never find anything that is against the state of China. So because
that's about censorship, right?
There's no doubt about the fact. I do advocate for increased censorship, but only because the misinformation has become demonic for us. It has led to problems as big as terrorism, as big as suicide bombers, because these people continue to get misinformed and they continue to get radicalized. So I do.
That's perhaps a topic for another time. I think it needs to be explored. Thank you so much, Barrister Safiullah Ghauri. Thank you for your time. Dr. Shoaib Ahmed, thank you for joining us today. Of course, it's relevant the way that misuse of social media has increased over time. Of course, it's relevant how we educate people. Of course, it's relevant how we react to this information. Of course, it's relevant how we authenticate this information. But the question is, in the meantime, perhaps there need to be more stringent checks for those that misuse social media. Of course, if it goes to court, again, libel, slander, and the effectiveness of these laws, it's often a case of too little, too late. Let's think about that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.